Welcome back to the channel. I'm Scott. Let me ask you, do you want to be a bankruptcy client? If so, I'm going to give you the 10 things you can do to become a bankruptcy client. Make sure to stay for all 10 because the last one can be pretty sneaky, and most people don't even recognize that they've been doing it until it's too late. Let's get into it. Now, I've been a bankruptcy lawyer for almost 25 years. I've filed thousands of cases during that time, and I've personally discharged tens of millions of dollars of debt from my clients. During that time, I've noticed certain patterns or signs of trouble that seem to always come up when someone is thinking about filing bankruptcy. I mean, these warning signs come up again and again and again, and most of the time the client didn't even see them coming. But you can be on the lookout for these financial mistakes in your own life. Now, the first way to become a bankruptcy client is to not have an emergency fund. An emergency fund is some money set aside so that when some unexpected expense comes along, like, say, a car repair, you won't have to charge a credit card to pay it. Here's the scary part. Over 1/3 of all Americans don't have $400 set aside to pay for some unforeseen expense. That means if the car breaks down or there's some medical emergency, you'd have to pay for it with a credit card. And if you have to pay for it with a credit card, you probably don't have the cash to pay off the debt in the month you incur it. You're going to have to make payments. And then that snowballs and compounds and just gets worse until some other unforeseen expense or change in your income forces you into bankruptcy. The hardest thing about having an emergency fund is starting. So, what you do here is take anything, $5 if that's all you have, put it in an envelope and put it away. Congratulations, you've just started your emergency fund. That wasn't so hard, was it? And I get it. Money's tight right now. But what we want to do is create that muscle memory for setting aside even just a little bit of money whenever possible. I do want to mention, though, that the goal here is out of sight, out of mind. So don't just move that $5 into a different part of your wallet or leave it sitting out on your dresser, because that's a surefire way to convert that $5 into a pumpkin spice latte or something else. All right. Put it away, forget it exists, and it'll be there when you need it. The second way to become a bankruptcy client is to use a buy now, pay later service. These are getting pretty popular, where you buy something now, pay something like 25% of the item up front, then make 3 or 4 payments later on the remaining balance. As it turns out, 70% of the people who use buy now, pay later services wind up spending more than they would have without it. On top of that, 25% of buy now, pay later plans wind up as credit card debt anyway, as people find out they can't afford the payments, so they use a credit card to pay off the loan. But there are other issues with buy now, pay later plans. Most plans don't report positive remarks to your credit report when you pay on time. But you better believe they do report if you are late or miss a payment. In fact, over 40% of people using a buy now, pay later service have been late on their payments. And 25% of buy now, pay later users have regretted their decision to use the service. If you've ever used a buy now, pay later service, leave a comment below telling me how it went and if you'll do it again. All right? Moving on. This is especially important for this time of year, but the third way to become a bankruptcy client is to buy Christmas presents with a credit card. As we speak, 35% of Christmas shoppers this year are planning on using credit cards to buy gifts. They know going in that they can't really afford the presents, but they're going to buy them anyway. Millennials and members of Gen Z are actually the worst offenders here, as half of them are planning on charging Christmas presents this year. This is particularly detrimental to your financial well-being because you no longer have whatever it was you bought to remind you of what you're making the payments for. I mean, with a car, you at least can use it to get around, so whenever you make your car payment, you know why you're making the payment every month. Okay? You just don't have that reminder when you're making payments on things you gave away at Christmas, so it's like you just threw the money in the driveway and lit it on fire. The fourth way to become a bankruptcy client is to carry a balance on your credit cards. Some credit cards have hiked up their interest rates to over 30% on balances you carry from month to month. All right. That's an interest rate we haven't seen in 40 years. A lot of people don't know this, but back then you could deduct your credit card interest payments from your taxes. But we don't have that anymore. So what that means is that if you're carrying balances on your credit cards, You really can't afford what you bought, and you're setting yourself up for a disaster. The fifth way to becoming a bankruptcy client is to only make the minimum payments on your credit card balances. Like I talked about in the last part, with interest rates so high, it will take 10 to 15 years to actually pay off the credit card if you only make the minimum payment every month, even if you never use it again. A lot can happen in that 10 to 15 years that can cause financial chaos. And if your money is tied up into monthly credit card payments, you may very well find yourself with no choice but to file bankruptcy. A lot of people don't know this, but when you pay more than the minimum payment, the extra money goes directly to paying down the principal, which allows you to pay off the card sooner. And with that, you're halfway to becoming a bankruptcy client. Let's move on to number 6. The sixth way to become a bankruptcy client is to use payday advance places. Okay, these are places where you get short-term loans of $300 to $3,000, and you agree to make payments when you get your next paycheck. Most of these places take the money out of your bank account, and if the loan is not paid in full, they charge you a service fee and roll it into a new loan, which, of course, incurs new fees. The effective interest rate for these kinds of loans can be 100% or more. Okay, and I've had plenty of clients who come to see me because they've taken out these kinds of loans and just can't catch up, and the debt just snowballs. The seventh way to become a bankruptcy client is so common you wouldn't believe it, and that is to co-sign for a car for a friend or a family member. And I get it. You're helping someone out who can't otherwise get a car loan on their own. And that person could have every intention to make the payments, but things happen. Life happens, all right? If that person loses their job and can't make the payments, then you're responsible for the car payments, okay? You could wake up one day and all of a sudden be on the hook for an extra $500 a month or whatever on a car you don't even want. And if you don't make the payment, the loan company will repossess the car, they'll sell it at an auction, typically for a lot less than what's owed on it, then sue you for the difference. That's called a deficiency. If you can't pay it, they garnish your wages, they put a lien on your house, or they levy your bank accounts in order to get paid. You know what stops a wage garnishment or a bank levy? You guessed it, bankruptcy. Then you're a client. I've had hundreds of clients who had to file bankruptcy because they co-signed for a car that had gotten repossessed and they couldn't pay for it. For example, with my own kids, when they turned 16, I told them, don't even ask me to co-sign for a car because I won't do it. I've seen too many horror stories. Before we move on, if you're finding this helpful, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons and click the notification bell so you'll know when I post more videos like this. The eighth way to become a bankruptcy client is to buy a timeshare. Why do people do this? I know. You're thinking you get a free vacation, you just have to sit through some sales pitch for some timeshare you're never going to buy. Turns out they make it sound so good, they don't let you leave, and before you know it, you're walking out with a timeshare you have to pay for, plus a yearly maintenance fee. And you never use it. So the whole thing costs you more than just paying for the vacation up front. The problem is timeshares always lose value and you can't sell it for what you owe on it, but you're making payments on something you don't use. And you can't get rid of it. What's your option? Bankruptcy. Don't fall for it. The ninth thing you can do to become a bankruptcy client is change your tax withholdings. So that way you bring home more money on your paycheck. This happens when people need a little extra money, so they change the number of tax withholdings on their paycheck, or they even go exempt, so no federal taxes are withheld. Sure, they get a little more take-home income up front, but the problem is that since they're not having the correct amount of federal taxes withheld, they wind up with a big tax bill at the end of the year. And more often than not, they can't pay it. So what do? A lot of time clients just don't file their tax returns, which is a whole other mess of problems. Sometimes they do file the returns, but they don't pay the taxes due because they just don't have the money. So they make a payment plan with the IRS for $50 a month or whatever, and this doesn't even cover the interest and the penalties, so what they owe compounds and just gets worse. And really, there aren't many things worse financially than owing back taxes. Ultimately, these people become bankruptcy clients because you can discharge back taxes under certain circumstances, but even if the taxes weren't dischargeable, the client might be more able to pay back their taxes if they were otherwise debt-free, which, of course, is the goal of filing bankruptcy. Now, there are a lot of ways to become a bankruptcy client, but the 10th and last one we're going to look at today is only looking at the monthly payment when deciding to use credit. What do I mean? This happens when you're thinking about buying something on credit and you tell yourself, well, the payment's only $200 a month. I can afford $200 a month. But you're only looking at the payment, not what it will actually cost to pay back the loan. Let's look at an example. Say you need furniture and you buy $5,000 of the new living room set, the bedroom set, whatever. Sure, the payment may only be $118 a month with normal interest for 5 years. But what you don't realize is that at the end of the 5 years, you've paid over $2,000 in interest. So the furniture actually cost you over $7,000. Was that furniture really worth $7,000? Probably not. But all you were thinking about at the time was $118 a month. That's why when you go to buy a car, all the salespeople do is push the payment. They know that if all you're worried about is the payment, they can do other things to make the car more expensive that you don't even see because all you're worried about is what it's going to cost you per month. Don't think only about the payment. Also consider the overall cost of what you're buying. So any of these things can turn you into a bankruptcy client, and the more of these mistakes you make, more likely it is you're going to see me or another bankruptcy attorney. The thing is, there are plenty of other reasons you might actually have to file bankruptcy that are out of your control. Like, say you lose a job, or you get divorced, or have some medical issue come up. But the last thing you want to do is anything that increases your chances of having to file. I hope you found this useful, and if so, hit the like and subscribe buttons and make sure to click the notifications bell so you'll know when I post more videos like this. Also, leave a comment down below telling me some of the mistakes you've made or maybe how you've avoided making these mistakes. I read all the comments and reply to everyone. Lastly, click on the next video to find out 6 mistakes you could be making with credit cards and how to avoid them. See you next time.